Welcome back for another vlog. In this video, I'm going to talk about the things I wish I knew about adopting a baby through foster care before we actually adopted a baby through foster care. Also, disclaimer before we start, our foster kiddos are on a visit with a family member. I do not have an update on their case and how any of that is going. But when I have an update, I will share it with you. Also, my other kiddo, our adopted kiddo, is not napping right now because, like I had mentioned in the last video, he is on a napping strike. So he is playing in the living room. I think he's watching Daniel Tiger right now. So we'll see how long I can actually record this before he comes bombarding in here, asking me 600 million questions or telling me or asking me to come play with him. But anyway, I shared a few videos ago about our adoption story and about how we adopted little man through foster care and kind of what his case looked like in his adoption. And so I will link that up above in one of these corners. I'm not sure which corner it's in, but I will link that above. And like I said, in this video, we're going to talk about the things that I wish I knew before our adoption, and some of these things are things that we did know before our adoption was finalized, but we didn't really know going into the adoption process. Some of these are things that I didn't really realize until after our adoption was finalized. And some of these are things, I guess, that I kind of maybe knew in the back of my mind, but I didn't really put two and two together and be like, oh yeah, this would happen and that makes sense. So let's get started. The first thing, and if I keep glancing down, it's because I kind of wrote a list. I didn't want to have to remember everything or forget things that I left out. So if I keep glancing down, that's because I'm just reading over my notes and what I kind of wrote down for things that I wanted to talk about. So the first thing is that even though we brought our kiddo home from the hospital, he spent 3 months there, and we brought him home from the hospital and he never left us after that. He was with me every single day of his life since then. There are so much things that I still do not know about him, or that I didn't know about him going into our adoption. A lot of things, like the first 90 some days that he spent in the NICU, I didn't know a lot of things that happened. I didn't know a lot of things that he went through. Our team of social workers at the agency who does the adoption do a really great thing of compiling all of his medical records. So I was able to actually get the medical records from his first 3 months in the NICU, but I didn't really know a lot of that stuff that was in there. There's a lot of things in there pertaining to his birth. For instance, when he was born, he had an APGAR score of A1. So he was pretty much lifeless when he was born. And he had to be intubated and all of those types of things. And I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that he had a brain bleed that didn't resolve itself until literally days before we took him home from the hospital. I didn't know that he struggled breathing on room oxygen pretty much his whole entire stay there. There is information in his medical records about the involvement or lack thereof involvement from his parents. I can see and put everything together from everything that we know about him and his medical records. And I can see that when he stopped having consistent contact with bio family is when he became a very inconsistent to a non-consistent eater in terms of bottle feeding. And so it makes me wonder, like, oh, well, maybe if he had somebody there with him to form those attachments, maybe he would have never needed a feeding tube in the first place. I don't know, but I didn't know any of those things. And so I spent many years, well, the first 2 years of his life, 2.5 years of his life, going to doctor's appointments and meeting with specialists and new specialists. And I was asked questions and I didn't know the answers to them. And then even after I still got that information, I still don't know the answers to a lot of questions. We just recently had an appointment where I was being asked about prenatal related things. And because technically that is information based on his birth mother, those are her records. So I don't have any of that information. I don't know any of that. I also don't always remember everything that was in his medical records that were given to me. It's a lot of information. When we got his medical records, or if I put the stack of all of his medical records from the day he was born until the day he was adopted, and I know that it's missing a couple doctors that we saw, but his stack of medical records are this big because he is a medical kiddo. So he has, I mean, it might even be bigger than that, but that's as big as that will fit in the screen for this video. But I don't know a lot of things. I get asked questions about like things that he may have been exposed to in utero, and I don't know. And filling out that paperwork whenever you go to a new doctor or a new specialist or anything like that, and they ask you all those questions, and then you have to say, I don't know. And then a lot of times I've had people say like, well, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, well, you know, he's our adopted kiddo. I don't know any of that part of his life. And he maybe will have questions about that part of his life or things like that, or when he gets older and is going to doctors himself and filling out paperwork. And I mean, let's be honest, how many guys, I mean, even I shouldn't just say guys, but even myself, when I was a young adult filling out doctor information, like, I don't know. And I'd call my mom and I'd be like, Mom, how do I answer this? And I'm going to have to say to him like, well, honey, I don't know. You need to write on there that you're adopted and you don't know any of that information about that part of your life. And so I guess I didn't fully realize how much I wouldn't know still, even though he was an infant when we brought him home, even though he has been with us pretty much his whole entire life. I still don't have the answers to all the questions. I still can't fill in all the blanks. And in the end, now looking back, like I said, I guess I didn't realize that there would be so many blanks that I can't fill in. We were fortunate enough that a family member of his birth dad filled out a medical form for us about his birth dad's medical information, and so we have that, but we have no information on his birth mom and medical information and things that may run in their family genetic wise, or things that we need to look out for in the future. We don't have any of that, and so I think that might also be something that is a struggle for him as he gets older, and something he's going to have to deal with in terms of filling out all that paperwork as he grows and ages. Another thing that I didn't know, or I wish I knew more about before adopting, was that even though we adopted our kiddo as well, I mean, we adopted him as a toddler, but even though he has been with us since he was an infant and he's never lived anywhere else and doesn't know anyone other than my husband and I as his parents, and my stepson and his brother, he still has a lot of trauma. He still had a lot of trauma. We went through a phase where, and sometimes he still reverts back to this, but we went through this phase where his attachments were so severe. Like I could not leave him anywhere. And I'm not talking like typical kiddo attachments, they're really attached to mom. They have big emotional meltdowns when mom and dad leave and whatever. Like I'm talking like I could never even put him down somewhere because he's squeezing my arm so hard and pinching me and hyperventilating and screaming and thrashing around before I even try to set him down somewhere with someone new. I'm talking like he doesn't even know or can't even comprehend the fact that, hey, we're going to go do something different. And because he had so much medical needs for a while, I never left him with anyone because he needed to be with a trained professional or someone who had been trained in caring for him. But when it finally came time to take him to the church nursery, for instance, he would have a full-on panic attack, anxiety attack, just walking down the stairs into where the area of our church nursery and Sunday school. We had a very sweet lady who was in charge of any of that downstairs, and she would always come and try really hard, and she was very understanding, and she really did whatever she could do to accommodate us, but there really was nothing to accommodate him. He knew the second that we walked into our church building that up the stairs is the way he needed to go, and that is what he felt safe. And if at any time I took him down the stairs, which also happened to be where the bathrooms were with the changing tables, so if he needed to be changed while we were there, he threw fits walking down the stairs. And like I said, I'm talking like full-blown panic, full-blown anxiety, screaming, kicking, pinching me, not to be mean, but like more so of like grabbing onto me, like you're not going to put me down anywhere, you're not going to give me to anyone. That was really a big impact. I taught preschool, I worked in daycare, I did all of these things. I've dealt with many kids with separation anxiety, and I've never seen a kiddo with anxiety and separation to the level of what he had. And I think a lot of that stems from his abandonment, essentially since birth. He spent so long alone without forming those attachments. When he did form them, they were I guess a little unhealthy, you could say. He now at 3, it took us until this past summer, for him to feel comfortable going down to Sunday school without screaming. I have spent many times sitting with him in the hallway down there. There's a little area where there's chairs and books, and I've had to sit down there with him and just, be like, okay, well, mom's going to stay right here with you. We won't go any further. I had to spend time with him in the classroom to get him comfortable to be in there. It was kind of just a step-by-step process, and now he does really great. Unfortunately, this last Sunday, he happened to have been switching from one classroom to the other for a project that they were doing, and he saw me down there when I was dropping the baby off in the nursery because she needed to eat before she went down there. And he had a little meltdown because he saw me and he couldn't come with me. But his meltdowns and separation have kind of gotten to the point now where he can be comforted after I leave, and he's okay. But it was really rough for a really long time. I didn't really realize that his attachment would be that severe. Another trauma that he has, because he had a lot of medical issues as a newborn and an infant, and a lot of invasive procedures done being in the NICU. Everything about the NICU is pretty invasive for a baby. He has a lot of medical trauma. So because of the NICU, he had a lot of appointments post-NICU with various therapists and doctors. Because he was born in the winter, he had to go to the doctor every month to get vaccinations to prevent certain illnesses during cold and flu season. He also had to go through a lot of extra medical testing because of his genetic things going on. And then his genetic things also caused some additional illnesses. He was continually sick for the first 2 years of his life. We were in and out of doctors all the time. We were always seeing specialists. And he had a lot of medical trauma towards nurses and doctors. And even that trauma got to the point where we would pull into the parking lot of medical facilities, and he instantly knew they were medical facilities. And he would just start crying when we got there, and he cried the whole way that we walked up to the office. He screamed and thrashed when medical professionals were just trying to listen to his heartbeat or take his pulse. He just had no trust. He thought everything was going to be invasive. Everything was going to be painful for him. In bouts of his illnesses, he had to have several different blood draws and those types of things. And he just did not deal well with that. In fact, when he was, I think about 9 months old, he still was not sitting or crawling or doing anything like that. And his pediatrician was concerned. And so he also was concerned that his hips were maybe a little loose and that maybe that was part of the problem. And so we went to have x-rays and an ultrasound done of his hips. And I can just remember standing in that room for him to have the x-rays done, and them just calling more and more people to come in there and help because he was thrashing so badly. He was so terrified. In his tiny little 9-month body, I think when he was 9 months old, he maybe weighed like 15 or 16 pounds. He was tiny. And it took 5 technicians to hold him still long enough to get a picture done. And even now, he's gotten better. There are certain places that we go, and when we get there, you can tell he's really nervous. He gets really jittery. He clings to me. He doesn't, I have to hold him the whole time. He kind of has a death grip on my shirt. I can't put him down once we get like to the scale or anything like that. He won't do any of that willingly because there are some facilities that just hold more trauma for him. And I think he remembers. I think he remembers the trauma of certain places. There are other places that we can go, for instance, where his therapist's office are. And we get there and he's happy and excited. So he definitely knows the difference between, oh, this is a safe place where I'm just going to play and have therapy versus this is a place where they have done X, Y, and Z and I don't like it. Also, for a long time, his pediatrician, the nurses would come in and try to do like all of his vitals before an appointment, and they couldn't. They just couldn't do it. And the pediatrician would come in, and he's really great with him. We have an awesome pediatrician, and he always could get his vitals for the nurse because he would let him, but he had just had so much trauma associated with nurses and everything else that he wouldn't let the nurses do anything. And so I didn't realize going into this that our kiddo at a baby would have so much trauma, and that trauma would linger for such a long time. That has been a big shocker for me. Now, most of those traumas are things that we've worked through. He is 3 years old now, and a lot of that we have worked through. We don't have the severe separation anxiety. He is a pretty good judge of character, though. So if somebody looks a little sketchy, he doesn't really talk to them. He avoids them at all costs. But if you look very friendly, he'll say hi to you and whatever. We kind of have entered into this new shy phase where he covers his mouth and kind of hides behind me, which is new. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. It's probably just a part of his development. But yeah, I didn't know about adoption was that going into adoption through foster care, that it is completely free. So we do have to have money. We did have to have money up front, but I'm talking like less than $100. That's all we've paid so far for this adoption. Everything in terms of the adoption through the court systems and the lawyers and all that stuff is all handled from the county and the adoption agency, and we didn't have to pay a dime for that. I don't know if you can hear him in the background. He's being a little silly. As far as what we had to pay to get his birth certificate, and we had to pay a filing fee. So less than $100 we had to pay for his adoption. We were told that you can get that reimbursed or refunded to you. I just didn't want to go through the hassle of getting it reimbursed or whatever. So I didn't know. There was a point when we were talking about the adoption and moving forward that I just said to the social worker, like, how much does this cost? Like, we need to prepare financially to adopt this kiddo. And she was like, it doesn't cost you anything. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know adoptions through foster care were free. Another thing I didn't know in terms of the adoption, and that I was told this information before we actually signed any paper saying yes, we were going to adopt him. I did not know that he still qualifies for state insurance. So what we chose to do was to have him on our insurance as primary insurance, and then he has the state insurance as his secondary insurance. And I also didn't know that that was a thing. Our adoption was in June. It is now September, and we just got a bill in the mail for over $6,000 from the insurance company. That was before insurance plan discounts or anything like that, but it was almost $7,000 in the mail for 1 month of speech therapy and 2 months of occupational therapy and physical therapy. And I am so thankful that we still get... It's all dirty again?
Clean up.
Okay, go clean up.
Okay.
Good job. I didn't know that I'm just thankful that he still qualifies for that state insurance, because the way it works is our insurance does all the plan discounts and they pay whatever they're going to pay, and then the rest of the bill gets sent to the state insurance and the state insurance pays the rest. People who don't have that backup resources, I mean, props to you guys, because I don't know how we would ever be able to afford to have a biological child with the needs or more extensive needs than what we have in an adopted child. There is no way that we could afford... One more time? You're going to clean up one more time?
What?
Okay, go on.
1, 2.
Thank you. I don't know how we would ever be able to afford just his therapy alone. And at 3 years old, therapy, outpatient therapy is the only thing that he can have. Okay. Okay, go on. Good job. Go clean up. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this because he's just going to keep interrupting me. But anyway, we would never be able to have him in outpatient therapy. And he needs outpatient therapy. He needs to be in the school district. But we've been failed by our school district here, which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother video at a different time. That was one of our concerns when we were first approached about adoption, was just like, I don't know if we'll be able to afford to pay for his medical bills if we adopt him. And at that time, our workers just said, like, don't worry about that. Like, that's not even a problem. I mean, it's not even going to be a problem for you. And now I realize why she said that, because he still gets insurance through the state. Another thing I didn't know, or I wish I knew before adoption, was that I wasn't always going to feel happy. I wasn't always going to feel excitement. Sure, as we're going through the process of ending his case with foster care, moving to adoption, and then adopting him, I was excited. I was happy. I was everything like in enjoyment type of feelings. However, I did not know that sitting in that courtroom on the day that his parents' parental rights were terminated, I did not know that I would have so much sadness, so much pain. I'm going to try really hard not to tear up, because even sitting here now, months later, and thinking back to that day, the emotions are still very real and still very raw for me. We had a member of his bio family who was in court that day, and she sat next to me, and it was very hard for her. But she knew that he is where he was meant to be, and that this was the best place for him, although, you know, that still was kind of closing a chapter in his life. And I walked back to the car, and I had so many emotions. I sat in my car and I cried for a good 5 minutes, because part of my child's life was gone. He had birth parents, but they were no longer his parents. That chapter was closed. That door was shut. You know, it was a loss. He didn't understand it. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know that day from the day before. But I still felt sad for him. My heart broke for him, because he was losing something he didn't even know he was losing. He was losing something he couldn't even understand was gone. And I just sat in my car and I cried, because okay. Okay, go clean up. We're not doing very good at the cleaning up. Thank you. Apparently we're not cleaning up. And it's probably a good thing that he just interrupted me, because the tears are coming. Anyway, I just felt so much heartbroken. Anyway, I just felt so much sadness and pain for him, because it was just the ending to a part of his life, that kind of is a whole world of unknowing everything. I also felt extremely sad, because it hit me at that moment that my child was like officially an orphan. He didn't have birth parents anymore. He had birth parents, but he didn't have birth parents in the same aspect as that their rights were terminated. So he had no legal parents on paper. We were not his legal parents yet because we hadn't adopted him, and his birth parents were no longer his legal parents because those rights were terminated. And so he truly was an orphan for a few months. He was a ward of the state. And that made me feel really sad too. I remember saying that to someone and they were like, why would you even think like that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just have so many emotions going on right now. And I don't know why. I thought we would go into TPR and I would feel really happy and I would be excited. And sure, part of me was happy, but more of me was sad than it was happy. Of course, you know, as the days went by and we were back into the daily life of things, the feeling of sadness got a little less and the happiness came back in. But clearly sitting here today, because I'm tearing up just talking about it, I still feel sad for him. I still feel that sense of loss for him, that he's lost that part of his life. Fortunately for him, that same bio parent, or that same, wasn't a bio parent, but that same member of bio family has gotten the chance to come to our home and meet our kiddo and play with him and interact with him. And that was a really cool and amazing thing. And we're kind of just going to see how this relationship plays out. And so I'm super happy for him that he still has, hopefully, that connection with his bio family going on in the future. So I'm really hoping that everything works out with that and he can still have that type of attachment or connection. Yeah. Okay, go clean up. Thank you. I love you. Mwah. Go clean up. Thank you. Good job. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. Like always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment those below. If you have anything in particular you want me to talk about in this video, yep, go clean up. Thank you. I don't think you're all done cleaning up. I don't think you cleaned up at all. Okay, go clean up. Go, go, fast, fast, fast. Run, run, run. Like always, if you have any videos or topics you would like for me to talk about, feel free to comment those below. I'm going to try to incorporate a little more day-to-day, everyday life with us. Run, run, run. That's my cue to exit because... Go fast! Whee! Because I don't think he's going to be very patient with me for much longer. Until next time. Bye.